If you're looking for high growth AI ETFs with low expense ratios, that is exactly what we're covering today. We'll talk about the top 5 AI ETFs with strong returns and one ETF that I'm avoiding. I'll also show you the scorecard that you can use to evaluate and choose ETFs for your own portfolio. AI ETFs are popping up everywhere right now. But if you pick one based on the coolest theme or the most exciting name, you can end up with a fund that's actually expensive, inefficient, and poorly structured. Today, I will first explain the scorecard, and then we'll go through each ETF step by step. Now, if you want to skip ahead, I do put timestamps in the description. And remember that this is not financial advice. This is just how cash works. Always do your own research and your own due diligence. Now, here's the problem most investors will run into with ETFs. When people search for AI ETFs, they filter by theme. They see artificial intelligence in the fund name, and then they look at the one-year chart, and then they buy it. That strategy has burned a lot of people. Let's think about an example, the ARK Innovation Fund in 2021. It was one of the best performing ETFs at the time. Billions of dollars flowed into the fund, and then it dropped over 75%. Many investors who bought near the peak are still waiting to recover. And the same pattern is starting to appear again with AI-themed funds. High fees, narrow holdings, and aggressive marketing often disguise weak structural design. This ETF scorecard keeps you honest. It forces you to look past the marketing and focus on what actually matters. It gives you a simple way to compare ETFs objectively. Now, this is a simple framework. I use it to compare ETFs consistently. It's not perfect, but it'll quickly expose strengths and weaknesses. Every ETF receives a score out of 10 and based on 5 categories. Liquidity measures how large the ETF is and how actively it trades. Larger funds are easier to buy and sell, and they're less likely to close. Cost looks at the expense ratio because fees compound against you over time. And to make this real, imagine 2 investors each investing $50,000. One pays 0.09% fee and the other pays 0.68%. After 20 years, the investor with the lower fee ends up roughly with $40,000 more. Fees do matter. Performance measures the 5-year return, and this shows whether the ETF has actually delivered results over time. Income comes from the dividend yield, and those provide stability and reinvestment potential. Structural strength looks at what the ETF actually owns, and when you combine these 5 factors, you get a clear score out of 10. The difference between strong ETFs and weak ETFs usually becomes obvious very quickly. It's also important to understand that AI is not a sector. It's a layer that sits on top of semiconductors, cloud computing, software, and energy. So the strongest ETFs are the ones that own the infrastructure behind AI. Now let's apply the scorecard. We're going to go in my computer and we're going to look at these ETFs that provide exposure to artificial intelligence in different ways. Some will focus on semiconductors and some focus on software. Okay, we'll start with VGT because I feel this is one of the strongest technology ETFs available. The first thing I look at here is liquidity. You can see here that VGT manages over 110 billion US in assets. That immediately earns 2 points. Funds at this scale are extremely stable, they're easy to trade, and widely used by institutional investors. Another thing you can look at here too is the average 30-day volume. You can see here it's over 500,000. That's not as high as some of the other ones we're going to talk here, but you can actually look at this metric here and it tells you how much is traded. So that's another indicator of how liquid this can be for you. Next is the cost. Right here you can see that the expense ratio is 0.09%. So that earns it another 2 points because this is actually incredibly efficient. And over long periods, low fees make a massive difference. Now the most important part is the holdings here. Let's have a look. Looking at the top positions, you'll see Microsoft, Apple, Nvidia. These are not speculative companies. These are companies building and monetizing artificial intelligence infrastructure. Microsoft integrates AI into enterprise software. Nvidia produces the chips powering AI. Apple deploys AI across its global ecosystem. So basically, this is exactly the kind of structural exposure we want. So VGT earns another 2 points for structural strength. And performance over the past 5 years, let's have a look at that. If we come back, we can go to the 5-year. We can see that we're at 97.8%, which earns it another 2 points. I like to see these kinds of numbers here. So next we're going to look at the dividend yield, which you can see here is 0.41%. So we do get a little bit of dividend here, which earns it 1 point out of 2. So that brings VGT to a total score of 9 out of 10. Now that is a very simple, again, I want to say that again, it's a very simple way to look at this. There's a lot more information you can look at here, including the technicals. You can read the news about it. But when it comes to picking an ETF, this is probably doing a lot more than a lot of people out there are doing, is just kind of looking and making sure that you're not buying into marketing, you're buying into actual numbers. So moving on, now let's move on to FTEC, the other one that I picked here on my list is following a very similar pattern here, which is a good thing. It manages over $15 billion in assets. That earns it 2 points for liquidity. We can also see the average volume here is similar to the other one we just talked about. Its expense ratio is around 0.8%, which earns it another 2 points. And this is one of the lowest cost ETFs available. Its holdings, if we have a look at that, you can see here that the holdings are similar to the other one, so there is some overlap here. Includes Nvidia, Apple, Microsoft, Broadcom. Again, these are the companies providing the infrastructure and compute power that artificial intelligence depends on. So because of that, FTEC earns 2 points for structural strength and performance. Let's have a look at the 5-year is around 99.2%, and that's extremely strong. So that earns it 2 points. Its dividend yield is modest at 0.43%, so it earns 1 point there. And that brings FTEC to a total score of 9 out of 10. Next is QQQM. Manages over $70 billion, which earns it 2 points for liquidity. This ETF tracks the Nasdaq 100, which includes many of the most influential technology companies in the world. Its expense ratio is 0.15, which earns it 2 points. Its holdings are similar again with some overlap, but you can see down there are some more. And you can also track the number of holdings. I should mention here that you can see that there's 103 total holdings. The holdings do include Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon, Meta, Alphabet. These companies are deeply integrated into the artificial intelligence, as we know, not just developers, but as the primary beneficiaries of AI deployment across cloud, computing, advertising, and enterprise software. And because of that, QQQM earns 2 points for structural strength. Now, performance has been strong. Let's have a look. 80% over 5 years, which is strong, and that earns it 2 points. Its dividend yield earns it 1 point. We have a 0.50, which also brings this to a 9 out of 10. Now let's move to SMH. SMH focuses specifically on semiconductors, which are the physical backbone of artificial intelligence. It manages over $45 billion, earning it 2 points for liquidity. Its expense ratio is higher at 0.35%, which earns it 1 point, but its performance has been exceptional. Looking at the 5 years, we're looking at 225% over 5 years. Very impressive, so that earns it 2 points. Its holdings include Nvidia, TSMC, Broadcom, and AMD. These companies produce the chips that every artificial intelligence system runs on. Without the semiconductors, AI cannot exist. So this gives SMH extremely strong structural importance, so it earns 2 points. Its dividend is minimal, so it earns 0 points there, so we're going to bring SMH to a score of 7 out of 10. Now, you could give it 1 point since it actually does have a dividend, because some of them don't, but in this case, we're going to go 7 out of 10 for SMH. Now, let's talk about XLU. Now, XLU is not an AI ETF directly, but it owns the utilities that power the data centers AI depends on. This ETF provides exposure to companies which may not seem directly related to AI at first, but if you think about it, very related to AI. Artificial intelligence requires enormous amounts of electricity, so data centers consume massive energy, and as AI adoption grows, electricity demand grows alongside it. So XLU manages over $23 billion in assets, which earns it 2 points for liquidity. Its expense ratio is only 0.8%, so there's 2 points there. Its dividend yield is 2.53%, so it earns 2 points there. Performance has been solid with 50% over 5 years, but it only earns 1 point based on our other ones. And structurally, XLU earns 2 points because it provides exposure to the energy infrastructure supporting artificial intelligence. So that brings XLU to a total score of 9 out of 10. Now, another one you could look at here is XLE, which is similar, but it focuses more on the energy sector. So moving on, let's finally look at the last one that I am showing you an example of one that doesn't match what we need. This did not make the top 5. AIQ, the Global X Artificial Intelligence and Technology ETF. AIQ manages over $7.5 billion, which earns it 1 point for liquidity. Its expense ratio is 0.68%, so that earns 0 points. That's a very high expense ratio. This is dramatically higher than the other ETFs we've covered. So performance has been decent. In 5 years, 64.3%, earning it 1 point. Its dividend is 0.19, so that earns it 0 points there. And structurally, looking at the holdings, let's have a look. You can see that there is a lot of overlap, again, with Apple, Micron. These are all in the other ETFs we talked about, NVIDIA, Meta, Netflix. And so structurally, it still earns 2 points because it does provide exposure to AI companies. So that brings AIQ to a total score of 4 out of 10. But here are 2 key issues. If you invested $100,000 over 20 years of compounding, the fee drag from AIQ can cost you somewhere in the range of $35,000 to $45,000 in lost growth compared to VGT. Now we're assuming similar underlying performance. And here's the part that makes it worse. If you pull up the top holdings here and then pull up the top holdings of, say, VGT or other names in my list today, you'll see significant overlap. You're not getting a meaningfully different portfolio here. You're paying a dramatically higher fee for largely the same exposure. So that's why AIQ doesn't make the list. If I was going to invest in some of the stocks here that aren't already overlapped, then I would probably go individually with the stocks that I felt were important to me if I felt they had to be in my ETF. So that's where it comes down to really looking for yourself as to what kind of exposure you want here, and are there companies in the holdings that you would like access to and exposure to, and if not, then maybe consider owning those directly. So here are the key takeaways for today. If your goal is pure long-term growth, VGT or FTEC alone provide extremely efficient exposure. You don't need to overcomplicate it. If you want growth and income, pairing QQQM with XLU provides both technology growth and dividend stability. And if you want more stability, increasing your allocation to XLU while maintaining some technology exposure can balance growth and income. So these ETFs serve different roles. Artificial intelligence is not about owning hype. It's about owning the actual infrastructure behind it. The strongest ETFs combine low cost, strong performance, and durable structural exposure. If you found anything in this useful today, please subscribe to the channel for more breakdowns like this. This is how cash works. Thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you in the next video. Take care.